Howdy y'all, Wyrm here. Welcome to episode 2 of the series where we overlook classes and jobs that may or may not be added into Final Fantasy XIV. Today we're taking a look at a caster role that is more than likely than some of the others to be added into Final Fantasy XIV. That job is the Necromancer. Now, the Necromancer is a recurring job, however it's not one of the most well known, mainly because it sits in obscurity, mainly overshadowed by the mainstream jobs that we have in the series. Now, the job itself only appears in a couple of games and is only playable in a couple of those games as well. It's most permanently featured in Final Fantasy V, however it does make an appearance in Final Fantasy XI, which I'll go into in a second. Now, let's start off with what the Necromancer is exactly. So the Necromancer is a kind of a caster. It uses caster-like abilities, however it rotates around a different formula. In the likes of Final Fantasy V, for example, they summon random undead or demon minions using the Oath command, and then they use various other spells and abilities using the Dark Arts command. Now, this Dark Arts is pretty different from the Dark Knight Dark Arts that we have in Final Fantasy XIV. It's just the names are the same. But essentially, the Necromancer revolves around summoning minions such as undead and demons, and then using caster-like spells. But another interesting fact about it is the Necromancer is technically an undead as well, so they're hurt by healing and raise abilities, but can get healed by death abilities and stuff like that. This makes the Necromancer a fairly unique class. It's one of those little niche classes that just fits into certain games like turn-based combat systems in Final Fantasy V, for example. Now, its signature abilities during the entire series are the Oath system and the Dark Arts system. So the Oath system is relatively straightforward. The Oath system allows the Necromancer to summon pets that fight on their behalf. As you can see here, here's a list of the abilities it's had from the Oath system in FF5. So it summons a skeleton, a Flamemancer, a Rajaform, whatever that is, and a zombie dragon. So essentially it's summon pets to do its bidding. So that's the Oath ability in a nutshell. The Dark Arts are the main meat and potatoes of the Necromancer in Final Fantasy V. It gains access to a number of caster abilities such as Drain Touch, which absorbs the HP, Dark Haze, Deep Freeze, Evil Mist. You can see the kind of trend that's going here. So it causes status elements, rends the enemy with Curse Winds, dealing damage, inflicting Petrify. It's a fairly vicious caster in the turn-based combat system, and its most powerful ability is Doomsday, which it deals incredible damage to all enemies non-reflectable, which is a major ability. Now, they're the main abilities of the Necromancer in Final Fantasy V, and as I've already stated, it's only been playable in a couple of games. Now, we're going to bring up a couple of things now. The first thing is Final Fantasy XI, which is the MMORPG that preceded Final Fantasy XIV. This is an important one. The Necromancer was technically supposed to be added into Final Fantasy XI at some stage. It was actually planned in one of the expansions years ago. They had definite plans to add the Necromancer into FF11. Who knows what Final Fantasy XIV could have actually been like if the Necromancer had been added previously into 11. We could have gotten it a lot sooner. Now, just because it wasn't added as a playable class doesn't mean it wasn't added at all. It was actually added as an NPC into the game itself. Now, it uses a number of caster abilities, it summons minions, similar to what it did in Final Fantasy V, so it plays out pretty much the same. Now, the fact that it came so close to being added as an actual job in FF11 leaves the door open for it to be possibly added into Final Fantasy XIV. I'm sure the original data for what the Necromancer used to be still exists for the FF11 team, so that could easily be migrated over, just depending on what it was actually going to be. But as I've already said in my previous episodes, the jobs and classes in FF11 and the ones that are in FF14 are literally night and day. None of them are the same, essentially. Like the Dragoon, for example, was completely different in FF11 to what it is now in FF14. Now, here's the main meat and potatoes. Is this thing going to be added into FF14? Honestly, I don't know, but looking at it and studying it, it is the most likely candidate out of all the casters that are actually left in the pool of jobs in Final Fantasy series. It could make a very interesting caster, a different caster to what we actually have. Like the casters we have focus on elements. Right, in Final Fantasy XIV we have the Black Mage, which focuses on the elements. Red Mage also focuses on the elements and between white magic and dark magic. And then you have the Summoner, which focuses on summoning pets and also using primal specific abilities, but are also just based on the elements. So the Necromancer would be something very different, and it's something that there is definitely a place for it. Now, in terms of what the Necromancer would be like, I actually sat for a while just thinking about what it could and couldn't be. Now, I think it would actually probably be fairly similar to the Summoner, in fact that it's someone's pet, because summoning a minion like a demon or an undead is just, it's built into the Necromancer parcel, and people expect it from the Necromancer now. So I think it would summon a minion like that and use that minion, or just actually have the ability to use minions outright as its main attack ability, and then use spells and different abilities to augment those in order to do the actual damage alongside its own caster spells. So I think that's sort of a niche that we're actually missing at the moment. The Summoner does a little bit of that, but it's fairly limited in terms of the Summoner. The Summoner just uses a bunch of abilities. Like, it's gotten better with the latest expansion, but it's still not at that level where it just focuses entirely on the pet, which is what people would want from the Summoner essentially. The Necromancer could do that. It could focus around entirely demons and undead, summoning them and augmenting their abilities in order to do damage. Now, there's been a lot of speculation as to what the next job will actually be. I mean, the door is open right now. There's doors open for a healer, the door's open for a caster specifically. I think it's likely we'll either get one or both of those in the next expansion, and I can't wait for the announcements next year in terms of what we're actually going to get. And that's it, guys. That's my analysis of the Necromancer. I've tried to make it as concise as possible, try not to wander off topic, and tried not to mumble as much as possible. So I'm getting there, but we still have a ways to go. And I'm already studying a number of other jobs and classes from the Final Fantasy series. Once I've fully read up on them and fully actually versed myself in what they are and what they aren't, I'll be able to do episodes on them then. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please leave a like or a comment, and if you want to see more of my videos, hit that subscribe button and check out my channel because I have loads of other Final Fantasy videos already uploaded. Thanks everyone, and have a good one.